Hey, everybody, I'm Kevin Eikenberry, and I'm here to help you reach your potential as a leader and a human being. Welcome to Live with Kevin. It's lunchtime. We might as well have lunch together. At least it's lunchtime for me and for my guest. My guest today is Jones Loflin. I'll tell you about him in a second, but what we're going to talk about today is what you've probably felt a lot in your life, but especially now. How are you dealing with all of the overload? All of the different roles and hats that you're trying to wear, and how are you dealing with all that overload in the age of COVID-19? That's what we're going to talk about today. And my guest is Jones Loflin. I reached out to him and we had a conversation a few days ago and I said, hey, let's do this. And he said, okay. So I'm graciously thankful for his graciousness. Jones is a speaker, a trainer, coach, an author. He's been at it for a long time, 25 years. And so he's not new to this game. He's been thinking about and helping organizations and individuals think about all of this overload for a long time. And he reminded me of where we met in Boston at a conference for the franchisees of Choice Hotels a number of years ago. Mm-hmm. And we've bumped into each other off and on ever since. And I'm glad that you're with me. Jones, welcome.
Oh, well, thank you, Kevin. I think when we met, I actually had a little more hair on my head. So it's been a few years and you still got yours. So
it's
congratulations. But it's better to turn gray than turn loose. So that's okay.
I'm happy. I'm actually happy that I'm wanting to see a hairdresser. You don't have to worry about it.
Okay. Well, that's right, because I have my own clippers. So, but no, it's honored to be with you about my favorite subject today as we talk about overload and things. And what a great combination with the work on leadership that you do, and just to really just kind of have a chat about how do we manage all this stuff that's going on right now.
Yeah, and you like to think about that as, you call it juggling elephants. You co-wrote a book with that title a number of years ago. And so I thought we'd start there. So maybe, is it fair to say that there are perhaps more elephants than ever right now?
Fair or factual might be yeah. No, I think I would take it to the next level and say it's factual to say that, because none of us were sitting around going, oh, I don't have a lot going on in my life. Oh, wait a minute. COVID-19 is making things heavy. We were all so busy prior to this. And then now we've got this new elephant of COVID-19, which has just added so much more, not just physical, but mental, emotional, financial weight to all areas of our lives. So absolutely, it's fair to say.
Well, I want to dive into some of that in a second, but I also want to tell all of you, if you're here with us live, wherever you are joining us on LinkedIn or wherever, Facebook, wherever, share your comments, say hello, tell us where you're from, ask your questions throughout. We can see them. And I also have the lovely and talented Marissa, who's watching in, and she can get to me and tell me things that I might not be able to see because I'm going to be focusing on our conversation. So by all means, let us know. Say hello. Tell us where you're from. Let us know the questions that you have, and we'll make sure that we address them as we go. So Jones, I think you made a really important point, is that you weren't lacking for work or having people not think they were overloaded before this.
Right.
And I think that when I first started thinking about this conversation, I was thinking, well, I'm trying to work full-time and parent full-time and maybe still teach school full-time. Some of our folks are, some of us are. And that's the elephants. But you're actually, I think, making a super important point, which is there are other elephants that aren't necessarily a role, but they're a worry. There's financial stuff. There's our own, however it is that we're dealing with our feelings about the virus itself. Forget the lockdown, forget all the other stuff, just the virus. Not everyone has the same set of thoughts about that or the level of worry about it, and that's okay, right? But I think that's part of it too.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. And I think you lead to a great jumping off point, because our listeners or people who are watching are going, okay, guys, we know we're busy, we know we're overloaded. What do we do about it? And I think you brought up a great point, is that I think you got to start and say, what's heavy to you? And of course, a lot of the people I'm coaching with might sometimes go everything. I'm like, well, that's not helpful because that's overwhelming. What would you say is heaviest to you right now? What is the weight that's most, causing you the most pain or pressure, and beginning to start there, because I think that's from the point where you say, well, this is what's heaviest to me right now, then you can take steps to do something about it. There was a great line a few weeks ago. I watched the movie It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers, and he made this comment about some of these difficult situations we're in life, and he says, if it's mentionable, it's manageable. And I thought that was a powerful point, that our first step should be to say, what is it that's so heavy, and to get specific, because then if it's mentionable, as they say in the movie, I think it's a little more manageable.
So let's be specific about that. So okay. I'm in Pasadena, California, and I'm not, but I'm in Pasadena, California, and I'm a 45-year-old female, which I'm not, and I've got 3 kids at home, and I'm trying to work full time. And you're saying now I need to mention this, and I need to identify it and mention it. Who do I need to talk to somebody? Do I need to write it down? Do I have to have a coach or a counselor? Do I talk to my spouse? Like, talk to me about, like, because I buy your point.
Right.
But how do I make it mentionable? Once I think about the questions that you asked about what's weighting me, what are the weighty matters for me? Mm-hmm. Once I identify that, what do I do with that first?
Yeah. Then I think the first step, and I talk about this in Juggling Elephants, is, we talk about, Juggling Elephants is about managing your work in life like it's a circus. And if it's a circus, you're the ringmaster. And one of the things that we talk about in there is that you got to decide what you have control over. And let's go back to your example of the 45-year-old single mom, with her kids at home. Let's just say that her kids are what are driving her nuts, right now. That's her biggest elephant.
That's not fancy. That's also probably factual.
Exactly. And so then she starts by going, well, what am I in control of? I can't send them back to school. I can't put them out in the yard all day. Those things. What do I have control of? Well, I've got control of my response to, my frustration or my anger, or whatever that emotion is of the moment. I've got control over my schedule. Maybe not 100% control over my schedule, but maybe 50% control or 25% control over my schedule. And so then once you start identifying what you can control, then it gives you a little more energy to keep moving. But if you're always focusing, well, I can't do this, I can't do that, then it's just like, the elephants just keep getting heavier and heavier. So I think that's the next step in the process. But yes, I'm sorry. Let me finish. And just one more thing is that you asked the question about, do I talk to someone? Absolutely. I like to encourage people, whether it's a professional coach or a friend, find someone who's a couple steps ahead of you, who seems to, have it figured out a little bit more. I mean, in these days of the COVID-19,
they may not.
They may not. Yeah. But it's so easy to find people who are where you are and go, yeah, it's bad, isn't it? Well, like, that's not helpful. But find somebody who seems, and a lot of people appreciate that, because they're like, wow, I'm glad you recognize that in me. Here's where I'm screwing up, but here's where I think I'm making some progress. So you might be able to learn from them. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
no, that's all right. And so that is, because now my fictional 45-year-old Pasadena, California self is saying, well, I don't think I know anyone that's got it all together. And you're not saying that. You're saying even if you don't know if they've got it together, you need someone that doesn't want to drag you in to the misery loves company game. What you want is someone that will encourage and lift you up, even if they don't necessarily have answers.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Because part of this is I love what you say, lift them up. Part of this is getting some more emotional energy and mental energy to have the confidence to deal with it. And if you don't have that, it's really hard to make progress. So you're exactly right.
Now, a lot of people have been big fans over the years of John Wayne, and John Wayne's a fine actor, lots of good movies. Here's where John Wayne failed us. He made it look like we're supposed to all be able to figure it all out by ourselves. And
you're so right.
The way the real world works. And Jones, what you're saying is exactly right. We've got to have a support system. We got to find that. We need it more than ever. I want to go back to something else that you said a couple of minutes ago and underline it, highlight it for anyone who's a leader who's listening here. When you said you encouraged us to make sure that we're finding and gaining a sense of control. Even if we can't control everything, we can control some things. And the more that we recognize what we can control, it helps us all the way around. So true, 100%. So as leaders, I would challenge you to remember that and to recognize that you have in your control the ability to give your team members more influence on things. They need to know there are questions that they have that you don't have answers for, and you're not answering because you don't have full answers. They need to know you're thinking about. You need to let people know what they can do about their schedule and if they can be flexible with their schedule right now, and give them that control. If you know that you're coming back to the office and a third of the people are coming back to the office for reentry on July the 17th, tell people, because then they can start to put something around that, and it gives them some boundaries to start to work with. Comments, thoughts?
I love that, because what you're also doing is giving those people, like you said, it's a sense of control and a sense of normalcy, a sense of expectation, a sense of anticipation. Because in this swirl that so many of us are in, there's so much uncertainty. We can't anticipate. We can't plan. But if you give people information that, okay, here's what we know and here's what's going to be happening. Okay, well, I can begin to plan. I know what next month begins to look like a little bit. So now I can begin to plan for what I might need to do with my children. And that sense of normalcy and a plan is huge. So I love what you said, Kevin, about what leaders need to do.
And even some organizations are determining that there are some criteria that will allow people to stay home. And if you don't have childcare, back to our fictional Penny in Pasadena person, the reality is that she may say, I don't know what I'm going to do with my kids. But if the organization is saying, that's okay, Penny, we're going to work with you because you don't have a way to deal with childcare, then tell her that, right? Mm-hmm. They still may be driving her crazy, but tell her that. Give her something to work with and work from. I think it's right on. Anything else that's driving, before we start talking about action, before we start talking about what we can do, and by the way, everybody feel free to send us your questions and comments. We'd love to have them. But anything else about what's making this even harder, or what's driving the overload today?
Sure. I think one of the biggest things, we're having to make so many more choices. Life is not on automatic. We all prefer schedules. We all prefer things being consistent. And now we have to make so many more choices. I mean, if Penny from Pasadena wants to go to the grocery store, she has about 8 or 10 more choices that she has to make about going to the grocery store than she did before COVID-19. She's got, okay, do I have my mask? Do I have my hand sanitizer? Okay, wait a minute. Did I stay 6 foot away from that person? I mean, it's exhausting, Kevin. I mean, even here in my small town where I live in North Carolina, if I'm going to the post office or something like that, there's extra decisions that have to be made. And we don't like having to stop and think. We just want to go get it done. And so I think one of the things that's driving it is just that we are having to make more real-time decisions, and we're tired.
Yeah, we can't operate on autopilot. In other words, from our habits, because the habits have all been disrupted, right? So one of the things that make habits helpful is we don't have to think about them, so they don't take any energy. And what you're saying is the habits disrupted, so now it has to be about intentional choice and such, and that's important. I think that's, people are talking a lot about the exhaustion from all the screen time and all of that. And I have to say that for me, I'm not really experiencing that. Maybe it's because I've done so much of this already for so long, but I think that's the difference, or that might be the difference. I've done this a lot for a long time in a bunch of different venues, most every day, some way or another. For others of you who that's new, there's not habits around it. And so there's other potential causes of the exhaustion that comes with, Zoom gloom, as I heard someone call it the other day. but the reality is that at some of that will get better simply as you create new sets of habits that you can do. You know how to log in, you know how to do it, you know how to move the screen so you don't have to look at everybody's face if you don't want to, and only the speaker and whatever else that might be, right? You learn how to not look at yourself, and get freaked out by whatever and all those things, right? So,
yeah. And I'd love to piggyback on something you just said there too, Kevin, is that yeah, when you begin to say, what do I want from this situation? Just like you mentioned a moment ago, I don't want to see everybody on the screen. I don't want, you begin to filter out the things that you don't want. And then if you've got a sense of a level of control, you say, okay, well, what do I want? What would be helpful to you? I love it when leaders and managers right now, and I get this feedback from some of the folks that I'm talking to, it's just, my manager's checking with me every day and they're saying, how can I help? Not, if you need help, let me know, but how can I help? And say, I'm telling them, I'm like, well, great. That's what they're there for. That's what they get paid for, but, really helping people to begin to say, what do you want? What would be helpful? And helping to drive that and give them the tools to do that, I think is really important to begin to develop, as you said, those habits and those consistencies that will allow them to go, whew, today wasn't a tsunami. It was only a hurricane, or something.
Yeah. Well, the other interesting thing that you say about that is that, you're saying, and I would agree, that the leaders that are doing that are having the right intention about that. I've said a lot to leaders around remote work for years about the fact that what we want is for people to feel like we're checking in, not checking up. And I love the idea of how can I help, because that really is a checking in question. Now, occasionally, sometime, depending in Pasadena or George in Georgetown or wherever, the reality is, if you may perceive that as still as checking up, but the reality is, assume positive intent. And if you're the leader, set an expectation about how often you're going to have conversations so that people at least know, well, he's not just doing it because he's wondering. He's not just doing it to see if I'm eating bonbons. He's doing it because he said he was going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. And Kevin, I know you talk about this too, and it comes to helping with that work overload. And we could talk about some of those others, but people right now, especially when they're working remotely, they want to work by outcomes. They really do, because that gives them the opportunity to be able to flex their schedules and figure out when stuff needs to be done. But there's still some leaders and not leaders, but managers out there that I'm hearing that are still working their people from the standpoint, well, what times are you going to be on today? Or when are you going to be, and it's like, no. You can't manage by hours. It didn't work in the physical workspace. It's even worse now. So if that manager's clear with that person about the outcomes they're looking for, then that allows me as Penny in Pasadena to go, okay, well, I might get up at 5 a.m. and work on some things, and then I'm going to spend some time with my kids for a few hours. Then I'll start working again. But you know what? I'll still meet the deadline for the outcomes they're looking for. So I think that's so important.
Two important points there. One is that if we as leaders, we need to be clear about that on the front end. And if you haven't been, you still can be, right? So you talked about outcomes right on. I think I focus on accomplishment, not activity. It's not about being busy. It's not. Now, if they have a job where they have to be customer facing on a phone, then you got to have schedules.
Yeah.
But beyond that, you can do exactly what Jones is saying. And so if you're here as a team member, you can't go scold the boss, but you can ask the question about, can we set some boundaries and parameters around the schedule so that I can make sure I'm meeting the outcomes, which I know you need, and meet the outcomes that I have in the rest of my life right now, which is kind of in a circus, right?
Exactly.
To your earlier point. So if you're a leader, if you haven't done that, have those conversations. If you're a team member, have that conversation. You can have that in a way that still holds true the values of what the manager needs, which is for you to reach outcomes. So if you lead with, I still want to make sure I'm meeting the outcomes and doing all those things, how much flexibility can I have to get there with my calendar or my schedule? Chances are you're gonna have a fruitful conversation.
Exactly. No, I love that, Kevin. Very simple process to use to help people get clarity so that they can figure out what their day needs to look like. Excellent. Yeah.
So before we started, when we were in the green room, so to speak, we were in the same room, but before we went live, you said, to which I was mentally clapping, and let's leave people with some very actionable stuff. Let's leave them with, if they've chosen to invest their time with us, whether it's live or they're watching us later, what can we do for them What can we give them around some specific advice? They've got all these weighty issues. They got elephants they're juggling. They've got overload in their work. They've got overload in their life. It's all matched together. They don't even know what day of the week it is. What specific advice do you have for them? And I started to write this question when you got here, and I had written, what specific advice do you have for people in today? And you said, no, how about in the next 30 minutes? I'm like, right on, man. So where can people start?
Sure. I love it. Do we have 30 minutes for this part? But no, here's the first place to start.
No,
they get out.
Overload,
That's right. We don't want to add an elephant to their schedule. You start with a piece of paper. Okay. They start with a piece of paper. They can just get out a piece of paper and they take a pen or a pencil. There you go. And you draw 3 rings on that piece of paper. And one ring is labeled work, one ring is labeled self, and one ring is labeled relationships. If you really want to speed up, put W, S, and R, and that'll speed you up even more. Work, self, and relationship. And then you stop at yourself and you go, how am I doing in each of these 3 areas of my life? Because in juggling elephants, that's what we suggest, is that you have 3. There you go, Kevin. Excellent. You have 3 rings to your life that all of your physical and emotional and mental and even financial energy is put into. You've got a work ring, a self ring, and a relationship ring. And you start by saying, where do I feel most overloaded right now? Now, which one of these 3 rings? Is it work? Is it self? Is it relationship? And then that process of, okay, within that work ring, what's so heavy? If that's the one that they're challenged with, okay, what's in my control? What's a step I could take? What's a right next step? What's one thing I could do to help with the overload there? And then they, begin to action on that. Maybe they're looking at it and they're going, I'll tell you what, I recognize right now when I see these 3 rings, I'm overloaded in the self ring. I just feel like there's no time for me. Okay. What does a right next step look like? What are you in control of? Are you in control of 15 minutes of your day? Great. What could you do in 15 minutes that would renew your mental, emotional, physical energy? Have you got 15 minutes? And even Penny from Pasadena says, yeah, I think I could crank out 15 minutes.
And that's probably not on Facebook.
Exactly. Because notice what I said. It's something that would physically, mentally, and emotionally pour into you, would add to your energy. You're right, not take away, because that's what happens so much on social media. And so that's where I would start, is those 3 rings, is starting there and going, where do I need the most help right now? And what does a step forward look like? I think that's one thing. Kind of in conjunction with that is, what are you in control of with your schedule? Is it an hour a day? Is it 2 hours a day? Start looking for the little pieces. Don't try to figure out, okay, how am I going to work for 4 hours straight? No. How can you carve out 30 minutes or an hour of really deep work? And where does that fit in your day? And then communicating that out to the people you're in the house with, to the rest of your team, saying, you know what, I really want to focus better. And so I'm going to be blocking out 9 to 10 or 1 to 2 or whatever it might be. If it's okay, I'd like not to have meetings during that time, but it's beginning to take more of that control so that you can, move forward. So those are 2 quick suggestions. I'm sure you've got some as well, Kevin.
Well, I just want to give one based on your first one for leaders. So if you're a leader, here's the advice I would give you. Jones used the example of, if maybe it's the self ring and that person says, I don't have any time for me. Well, there's a lot of people in the world right now that have a lot of time for them, like they're sort of not knowing what to do with some of their time, right? And maybe they're not here right now because overload didn't ring their bell. But the point that I'm making for you as a leader is not everyone on your team is in the same place right now. You've got Penny from Pasadena with 3 kids trying to work and manage all those things. You got other people whose spouse is also working from home, and that's causing challenges. You got other people whose spouse is on furlough. You have other people whose spouse is working on the front lines, and you've got some people who have pre-existing conditions and are worried about the virus itself, and you've got some people who are living by themselves in an apartment with a very different situation. As a leader, my advice to you in the next 30 minutes is reach out to one of the members of your team. Do you know where they all are? Not at a high level. Well, I know they live alone, but are you practicing your empathy with them to understand where they are? Listen, if you will take the time, what can I do to help? But also just be empathetic with your team members. You're going to help with their overload instantly.
Yeah.
because they will know that they're being acknowledged. They will know that they're being heard. And yeah, maybe you can help them in a tangible way with something on their schedule or whatever. But if you just do those things and are really checking in, you'll be helping everybody on your team immediately.
Yes, and Kevin, just to add to that, especially if when you're checking in with them, you're that authentic, transparent type of leader who says, "Here's what I'm noticing." It might be out of our time together today. That person who checks in with that team member says, I was just on a LinkedIn Live thing. And we're talking about our life, and I recognized, wow, I'm really struggling in the self ring, or I've got some work to do here. And that other person goes, oh. It's kind of like C.S. Lewis. What? You too? That kind of thing.
I didn't think that would be you.
Yeah, exactly. And so all of a sudden that person goes, oh, I just felt like it was just me, that I'm not capable of handling this. And when that leader says that to them, oh, you're right. The empathy and the trust that begins to be built with that other team member, because they're going, we're in this together. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. Jones Loflin. Thank you, sir, for being here. What will they find if they go to this website?
Oh, if they go to the website, first of all, you're going to find out more information about me, which that's not as important because you need help. You need tools. But if you go there, I have all kinds of downloads that they can actually get. 31 ways to get stuff done right now. How to work remotely. There's lots of resources there related to COVID-19. Also some video footage there of different topics on my YouTube channel, which is just youtube.com/Jones Loflin. I have over 200 videos that are 3 minutes or less related to time management, work-life balance, but you can get there from starting at jonesloflin.com, but all designed to help you with the struggle of too much to do, because that's always been true. It's really true right now, Kevin.
Hey, now we've got people coming in and making comments, thanking us for the attention to the variety of situations people are in, and we're linking up where people can get a hold of your book. That's all happening there for people on LinkedIn and elsewhere. So thank you, everybody, for coming. We've got more of these in the works. Next week is a holiday week, and next week is my birthday week. And next week, I'm finishing the manuscript of the next book, which is, here it is. I'll put it up there in the corner, The Long Distance Teammate. So next week, I'm not sure they'll be alive, but there'll be more coming, I promise you all. And Jones, thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure to have you. Of course, I knew we'd have a good time, and I knew we'd do something of value for folks. So thanks for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure, Kevin. Thanks for the work you're doing too around leadership. I just so appreciate how you're creating leaders that really are making a positive impact on those they're leading and in their organization. So, and happy early birthday. I understand you turned 50.
But yes, yes, I am turning 50. Well, thank you, everybody, for being here. We will be back. So come back and join us. Follow Jones on LinkedIn too. You got to do that. And we'll talk to everybody soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.